Collaboration is the greatest driver for cohesion within the walls of an organization. It brings out the best investment and attention to detail that any organizational leader can be proud of. But you as a leader have to make the investment in the people that you lead in order to see a return on that very important and timely investment. Let's dive into the numbers to buttress what I just told you, according to a study released by my friends at Stanford University. They found teams that make a concerted effort to work together are 50% more productive. This is certainly a sign that effective team building and working together is a direct link to increase productivity. When team members collaborate, they can accomplish more tasks and projects in a shorter amount of time. Meanwhile, the Harvard Business Review found that teams make more effective and collaborative decisions 87% of the time compared to individual ones. Collaboration brings more diverse perspectives and ideas to the table, often resulting in better, well-rounded decisions. The statistic suggests that group decision-making is often better, well-rounded, and more accurate. This, my friends, shouldn't come as a surprise to my friend Kenneth Hester. His work focuses on how leadership and teamwork drives successful teams. His goal is to dive deeper and help people understand how principles and practices can make great leaders and cohesive teams. Hester says that we live in a crazy, fast-paced world, and effective leadership is more important than ever before. He says it's a way of bringing clarity, inspiring action, and empowering individuals to unleash their full potential. Ken's competencies lie in business analysis and cross-functional team leadership underpinned by certifications in the 6 types of work genius and SCORE communication. These skills ultimately support organizations and their goals, and creating dynamic teams and spaces for spiritual and personal growth. And Hester joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm super excited to talk to you all about leadership and team building this morning. Happy Friday to you, and thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. Excited to continue the conversation, and you've set a great foundation with so many other leaders and entrepreneurs on your podcast, and I'm just glad that we can continue that conversation today.
As am I, my friend, and I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by asking you, my friend, what do you think are the four key tenets to great leadership, my friend. So, if I ask you to come up with your own fantastic four principles for effective and transformational leadership, how would you answer that question, my friend?
Wow. Well, to have four of them is something that would probably, it may take me a minute. So I'm going to start with two that come off the top of my head, and then maybe the other two will come to me. But I think one of the main things for leadership is communication. How you communicate, the clarity and effectiveness of your communication is so key. And oftentimes we think of just communication from maybe a podcast level, a book level. We think of communication from stage, in a keynote, something like that. But communication is in everyday conversation. It's in text messages. It's in direct messages. It's in email form. It is in phone conversations. And when leaders understand communication and how to effectively communicate, what their goal is, what the outcome is, what the expectation is, providing clarity around that communication, it really drives not only their organization forward, but it can drive their family forward. It could drive their friendships forward. It could drive their community forward. So that's the number one thing that comes off the top of my head. What's the number one thing that comes for you?
Leadership to me, Ken, is all about inclusion. As you know from listening and watching my podcast, I was born with cerebral palsy, Ken, and I actually found out at the age of 9, my friend, that I would never be able to walk for the duration of my life
Mm-hmm.
because of my disability. And I've made it my professional mission to break down those barriers to inclusion. So leadership, to me, all starts with inclusion and breaking down those barriers to inclusion. I always tell people that in life we're all given a standard deck of 52 playing cards, and the best
That's
part
right.
about life is that we can shuffle them in the direction that we all want them to go. So leadership for me starts with inclusion for all and breaking down barriers towards inclusion.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I would definitely add inclusion as part of my top four because I think inclusion it encompasses so much, right? I think sometimes C-suite level leaders or managers they won't include or engage in the next layer beneath them in providing direction for their organization. We've got to take in the knowledge that everyone has. I think sometimes we'll make decisions at whatever level that we're at and not really include the people that will have to execute those decisions. And we can probably make things a lot easier if we were to have that inclusion, regardless of life stage, regardless of ability, regardless of even rank within the organization. So that if we can include people together and then we become having that conversation like we're having right now, then that togetherness allows us to also be better. And what I see a lot of times in great leadership, I think with that inclusion, this would be my I guess now my third point, right? If communication is one, inclusion is one. I think a servant heart is a direct correlation to great leadership. Because if you're serving people, you're also communicating to them well. You're also including them. You're feeling, I'm going to serve you at whatever level that it makes sense for me to serve you. So if we're serving each other and as the leader serves, then the leader has a better understanding of what that person is also going through and what they need in order to get to the next level of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I know that you're someone who believes that the most valuable things in life are often not measurable. So I'm wondering if you can dive into that philosophy for me, and why do you hold that perspective, my friend?
Yes, yeah. That's been kind of my life motto is, oftentimes the best things in life are not measurable. What I mean by that is, how can you truly measure love? How can you measure connection? How can you measure inclusivity? How can you measure the ability to be on the same page with another human? And I believe that when we're trying to measure success or we're trying to measure achievement, oftentimes it comes in the things that we didn't think that they would be. We try to measure them in money or we try to measure them in status, but ultimately, the most joyful people, the greatest leaders, when you look at their life, when you look at their family, when you look at their friend group, they may not have that much, right? They may not have the material things, but they have more than material things, and they have that love, that acceptance, that no matter what, whether I am whatever country that you may be in, success looks different. Whatever state of life that you may be in, success looks different. To a 20-year-old, to a 40-year-old, a 60-year-old, an 80-year-old, success looks completely different. And yet, one of the things that is not measurable as far as status goes within all of those things is love. And when you feel loved and when you express love to others, then you say, man, I tell you what, I mentioned to you before we started here, I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. There's a picture of them when they were really little right here behind me. And it doesn't matter what my day is like. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I have the worst day or the best day. When I walk in that door, those kids love me regardless. And that is what is not measurable, right? Like I go, okay, cool. Now I feel like I can conquer the world because of the love that I have for them and that they have for me.
Life is all about perspective, right? And everyone, I always say that everyone's portrait of success is different, isn't it?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wonder your thoughts on how you think leadership and teamwork are interconnected in the mission of creating cohesive teams, because I know it's one of your goals to
Yeah.
explore the principles on how leadership and teamwork are interconnected. So I'm wondering if we can dive into that this morning.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, leadership and teamwork is something that everyone I feel like chases, right? Like regardless of an organization, there's got to be a leader. Regardless of the size of it, regardless of the bottom line, there's got to be a leader that's making decisions. But in order for them to make decisions, they also have to have a team around them. And the dynamics that are connected between leadership and teamwork is essential in the effectiveness of any organization. And so when I think about leadership, when I think about team dynamics, I think about how leadership connects to each layer. And so if we're working together on a project, I might be the decision maker, but I need to have all of the data connected to that. I need to know who's passionate about it. I need to know what the pitfalls might be. I need to know what the creative elements might be. I need to know each area of these things in order to make the best decision moving forward. And I think if leaders just go with their gut, or if leaders just go because of their title and they make those decisions, then ultimately they're going to create pitfalls for themselves and for their organizations because they haven't effectively made the decisions based on all the knowledge or all the opportunities that's out there because of the team that is around them that can help them see different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know that you're someone who believes that we live in sort of what I call an instant coffee society. Everybody wants instant gratification. And say, as we live in this type of a world, that effective leadership is more critical than ever before. And I'm wondering why you feel that way, my friend.
Yeah, I think when I see leaders as you mentioned, we live in this instant coffee, Keurig, situation where like, all right, I could get that in 30 seconds. Yet, I think that the best things in life take time. And I'll actually go a little bit away from your coffee analogy and give you a different one. You can heat anything up in the microwave, right? Like the microwave society, here we are. But really, for me, the best dinners that I had growing up and even now were those crock pot dinners, right? The ones that take 6 hours, 8 hours. Like if I'm going to put a roast in the crock pot, it's going to take 6 or 8 hours and it's going to fall apart when I'm done. But if I could put the roast in the microwave, but it is going to be tough, it is going to be nasty. I'm not going to want to eat it. And I feel like leadership is that in our society right now is we think that it's instant, we think that it's Instagrammable or that it's already proven when we haven't taken the time to actually prove that this works. And when you see effective leadership, you see this, invested into you as an individual. I'm invested into my team for the long haul. You see 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in, even if you're an inventor, even if you're not working with a large team, you know, there's 15,000 patents out there from Thomas Edison, yet we only really equate the light bulb to him, So it's like, oh my goodness, that there's one thing, but he failed at so many other things, or even he failed hundreds of times before the light bulb even worked. And so I think when I talked to a author recently, and she had just finished her New York Times best-selling book. And they said, how does it feel to be an overnight success? She said, it feels like I've been working at it for 20 years. And the recognition that we might get as leaders or as entrepreneurs or as creators might seem like it's overnight, but so many people have been doing this for years. For example, you're a great example. You're coming up on 1,000 podcasts, and some of those podcasts get tons of views. Some of them don't get any. You're in between, but you're always creating content, and you're saying, you know what? The one that you see that might have 2,000 or 12,000 views, it took me 800 other ones to get to that one. But people don't see the 800 other ones or the 900 other ones. They only see that one or those two or those 10 that get those super high views, and they go, oh, wow, look at that. How incredible is that? But it took you a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of intentionality and drive and consistency to get to the place where then someone recognizes it.
And you forgot one thing, a lot of apple juice. No, I'm only kidding. And that's okay. But you're so right, people. Forget about the journey, and they're only concerned about the result. All right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Absolutely, my friend. And I want to talk to you about achieving clarity in life and how that can help inspire action or empower others to unleash their full potential. So, what are your thoughts on achieving clarity and inspiring action all at the same time?
Yeah, I think the more that you discover of who you are, the clearer things can become around you. And I'm not one of those that says there's one way to do something, right? So I go, okay, if you want to take a DISC assessment, if you want to take up any personality assessment, Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or Strengths Finders, you want to take any of those assessments, you want to become a better or have a better understanding of who you are as an individual. That's going to make you better. And if you just subscribe to one of those, you might not be seeing all the different layers of who you are. I recently just took a YOS assessment, and it gave me a totally different understanding of what what I had understood before, because it's a different layer. There's so many layers to who you are as an individual, so you should be in a constant state of discovery. And then once you get to it from a personality standpoint, what I also love is how you get work done. So I've been a working genius facilitator for a few years now, and the what I love about that assessment is it doesn't take into account really your personality. It takes into account how you get things done, which provides the clarity you need to accomplish tasks and to move your organization or your business forward. So it might be, oh, this is how my personality is, but how does that rank in how I get work done and how I can move up this ladder or how I can get to a different pay scale? So if you understand and have clarity around who you are and how you get things done, I think both of those layers of clarity will help you achieve more than you thought was possible.
Yeah, and in your opinion, my friend, I'm also curious to ask you, what do you think is the best way to elevate the leadership skills of a corporate or organizational leaders to embrace the thriving team dynamic? And how do you think that's tied to establishing a great culture of collaboration within the walls of an organization? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say the one of the bigger things to focus on when collaborating with teams, when trying to figure out your organizational structure, and how are you growing as a leader. I can't expect the people around me to grow if I'm not growing. What are the podcasts? What are the books? What are the conferences? What are the investments, the masterminds? How am I going to continue to increase my level of leadership? I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan. You can see that behind me here as well. Got Mamba mentality behind me. And what I love about Kobe is he always was the first one to the gym. He was the last one to leave. He put extra work and effort in, and then the guys around him were able to see that leadership on a different level. Recently watched a documentary on one of the USA Dream teams that Kobe was a part of, and the guys were kind of coming back from the club one night, and Kobe was, as they were coming in the hotel from the club at like 2 or 3 in the morning, Kobe was leaving the hotel to go work out. He's like, I'm not here to have fun. I'm here to win gold medals. And that changed that team dynamic completely. And so I think when leaders get better as leaders, then the rest of your team gets better around you. Then that you can bring them along with you. Hey, listen to this book. Listen to this podcast. Let's go through this together. And that becomes the collaboration piece. Oh, this is what I learned from this conference or this podcast or this book. What did you learn? And if you gain a different perspective, a different understanding of the exact same material, then you can begin to apply it across your organization in multiple ways. So I think that collaboration clarity comes from your leader taking the first step and then bringing people along with them on that leadership journey. I think sometimes leaders will only invest into themselves and then forget to invest into the people that report to them or the people that are around them. So it's a both and. It's an investment of yourself and an investment into your team that leads to collaboration.
Yeah, because if you don't invest in your team, the numbers tell us that the productivity of an organization will go down because the team that you're in charge of leading isn't motivated to give their best effort, right? So
Right.
it's an important two-way street for sure, my friend. But I also wanted to ask you about the importance of organizational resilience. And again, I'll use myself very quickly as an example. Ken, when I graduated college, buddy, I graduated with a sports journalism degree, and it took me 6.5 years, buddy, to get my first paying job. Because when I graduated college, I went on 10 consecutive news interviews to become a sports anchor or reporter, and I was rejected 10 times because news directors looked at me and they told me I was qualified, but because of my disability, they refused to hire me. So I
Mm.
have now made it my professional mission to talk about resilience in the workplace and the importance of hiring folks with disabilities. But I'm curious to ask you about the role that organizational resilience plays in the overall health of an organization. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean it's directly correlated to what we've talked about a little bit already in pushing forward and moving yourself and your organization forward. So if you're not trying new things, if you're not risking a little bit, there's a little bit of risk in everything that you do, especially as a leader and within your organization. But if you're playing it safe, if you're saying we're not going to do that because it's too risky. I understand. Again, there are levels of risk, and you've got to calculate those risks. But I think taking calculated risk opportunities are better than, of course, non-calculated risk opportunities. What is the data? What supports your decision? What team is involved in that decision making? If you're making that decision on your own, then without any insight, without any oversight, without any board approval, without any checks and balances, you're going to fail mostly every time, right? But ultimately, if you could say, I'm going to take that all of that information and I'm going to have calculated risk. So that means there is a greater result potential than there is a failure potential. So if there's a greater success, now that success might only be 51 to 49%, right? It might not be 98 to 2%. But if you could say, I'm going to push forward in the organization resilience that we're going to show, regardless of maybe what our competitor does or regardless maybe of what the market is doing, if I feel that and my team is on the same page as me when we move forward, then we're going to move forward together. I'll use this example within my family. My wife and I don't always see eye to eye, well, especially when it comes to raising our kids. And yet, when we are on the same page before we talk to our kids, we say, I might not agree with you, but we are going to be on the same page, and this is what we're going to say. So we're going to move forward with the direction of our kids. If we go in split, then our kids will automatically win. They're like, okay, great. Mom doesn't know what dad's saying. Dad doesn't know what mom's saying. They'll play us against each other. And I think in an organization, it's very similar. If your IT department doesn't connect with your facilities department, if your finance department doesn't connect with your creative department, if none of those departments are talking with the executive leadership team, then you're not going to be set up for success. You're not going to be able to have the resiliency you can be successful for your organization to move forward because you're going to be running in too many different directions. And each of those individual areas may even have some success, but if they're not talking to each other, then there is no resiliency, there is no collaboration, there is no moving forward long term. You're going to hit a bump, a speed bump, a hurdle, a mountain at some point. And when you do, if those teams aren't on the same page, then you will not have the resiliency, you will not have the fortitude to move forward for in the next chapter of your organization.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that you're associated with the working genius and the score communication sort of apparatus, my friend. So I'm curious, how do you think this approach can help organizations thrive? And I'm wondering if you can dive a little bit deeper into how that process works, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, the score communication, as I mentioned, one of my the top thing that I feel like is key for an organization and organizational leadership is communication. So, I went to SCORE to not only figure out how to communicate from stage, but how to communicate emails, texts in every single way, and what my language was in communicating not only what I thought I was saying, but what was being received. And that communication barrier can be very difficult as well. What I think that I'm saying to you and what you're actually hearing can be two very different things. So how do we clarify those communication barriers? And I think I know it's asking questions. The more that I ask a question, now, what did you think I said? Or how did you hear that I said that? How did you receive that? What are you going to do from this point after what I said? If I can ask some of those questions before we leave the meeting structure, whether it's a one-on-one or whether it's a small group meeting or whether it's a large group meeting, if we can ask some questions before we leave the door, then people don't go running down trails and starting new projects off of what they thought that you heard, but more of what we all agreed to. And I think that leaders ultimately we fail at that a lot, where we think that we've said something clear, but the way that it's received is not as clear. So we can close that up with great communication, and with that, so the second piece of that is that working genius model. Different people. The working genius has wonder, invention. These are the six kind of characteristics of a working genius. You have wonder, you have invention, you have discernment, you have enablement, you have galvanizing, and you have tenacity. Well, different people on your team will have different strengths of those. You actually have all six, but you are frustrated by two of those, you are kind of indifferent about two of those, and then you are really energized, and it brings you joy. It brings you a genius level of understanding for two of those. So, for example, I'm invention and galvanizing. Well, on the scale, invention and galvanizing are a little bit higher on in the thinking process. You hear the analogy of 30,000 feet. Oh, you think at 30,000 feet. Well, invention and galvanizing are kind of like 20 and 25,000 feet, right? But enablement and tenacity, which are my lowest two, are more at like the 500-foot, 1,000-foot level, because tenacity is based on standards, it's based on structure, it's based on deliverables. Enablement is supporting the direction and the leadership and the action steps that need to be taken. So that's a lot of times are in the details of that. Well, I can live in those details. I can be in those details, but I'm not driven by them, or it doesn't bring me excitement. Just because I can do them doesn't mean I want to do them 90% of my job. What I want to do is I want to invent, I want to create, I want to get people excited about what we're doing. But if I don't incorporate, listen to, or add the layer of those teammates that they're really great at, then I can invent a whole bunch of things, but they won't actually get executed. Right? The other ones that are in there are wonder and discernment. Right? Wonder is asking the questions, asking the right questions. As I just mentioned before, do you have anybody that's asking you questions, not from a point of questioning your authority or questioning your decision making, but just questioning for clarity. We're trying to find the clarity that is needed to move forward. And then discernment is that gut feeling, right? Like, I just feel like this is going to work, and I'm not sure, or I don't feel like it's going to work. And my wife actually has discernment. And when I have a thought, when I have an invention, when I have an idea of what I want to do, I usually go to her first, because I say, how do you feel? And she can't always equate what that feeling is, but 9 times out of 10, that discernment in her, that gut feeling, that spiritual discernment, whatever it is, it guides her in a way that helps bring clarity for me. So I think as a team, if we can look at communication and we can look at these different team dynamics, for me as it relates to Working Genius, it gives us the ability to not only respect one another, to not only include one another, but to communicate with each other effectively for that team dynamic to be the most effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ken, I'm also curious to ask you about, collaboration. I know we spoke about that earlier, but I'm wondering if you can drill down to tell me about collaboration in the sense of changing the organizational culture. You know, a lot of the times when I speak to organizations about hiring folks with disabilities or changing
Mm,
their their attitudes on a certain aspect of their organization. You know, I spent some time talking about breaking down barriers to
yes.
attitudinal sort of stereotypes. So, how do you think inclusive collaboration can help us do that?
Yeah, I think we've got to be open to understanding each other's strengths. And if I look at somebody and based on how I see them with my own eyes, I immediately judge them, right? Like, oh, you could be this or you could be that, not knowing what their actual skill and talent and ability and opportunity to bring to the table is, and that is the worst thing. I love to watch America's Got Talent, and that is a great representation of how an audience, a group of people, will look at any individual and think that they don't have any talent just based on how they look. And they'll walk out and they'll boo these people just because of how they look. What if they have a disability? If they just are a different race. Sometimes they're just dressed differently. They're basing their entire um, uh, judgment,
Perception, yeah.
perception, right, on how they look. And then they'll come out and they give this talent. They can juggle or they can sing or they can dance. And then by the end, I mean, just in 2 minutes time, everybody's standing and cheering and putting them on to the next round. And I think that organizationally, if as leaders we don't get better at that, we've got to get better at, I need to see what your skills and what your talents are, regardless of if you dressed in a suit when you walked in or if you have sweatshirt on. Now, we can have the conversation of what the working environment should be and what that looks like as a lawyer, as a doctor, as whatever. But the qualifications are one thing, the skills and talent are another thing, and then the personality and team dynamics are a third thing. What is it that you need on your team that will actually move you forward? And so that inclusivity, regardless of ability, regardless of race, regardless of culture, regardless of socio dynamic, like we've got to be able to say, as leaders, I am going to look at you as someone that can add value to my organization. And let's discover that together. It might not be the value that I came in with or that I thought that I even needed. But I think sometimes we'll even dismiss people because we're looking for a specific role to be filled when you need a piece of the puzzle. I am looking for this one piece. Well, that doesn't mean there's not 1,000 other pieces. And if you don't fit this piece, that's okay. You might fit a piece that's over here. And if I'm too dismissive on the front end because of social status or any of the other reasons we mentioned before, then I, as a leader, am limiting the ability or I'm putting a lid on where our team and our organization can go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, in today's modern workplace, I'm also wondering your thoughts on DE&I as a concept, as an overall concept, and focusing specifically on, you know, incorporating or integrating individuals with disabilities as far as a competitive advantage. But how do you think we should redefine diversity, equity, and inclusion in today's modern workplace?
Yeah, I believe that it's going to take leaders and executives. It's going to take risk, right? There is risk involved, or they think that there's risk involved. There's actually less risk involved, and there's a greater uh, upside to inclusion and diversity and culture in your organization. So you go, oh, well, that's not the way that it's been, or that I'm not familiar with that. Again, back to a couple of things that we've said before. How are you growing as a leader? Do you need to take a diversity course? Do you need to take an inclusion course? Do you need how do you surround yourself with other people that are different than you so that you can have a better perspective and a holistic view of what it might look like for you as an individual and for your organization? So I want to put myself in areas where I'm uncomfortable. As a leader, if you are continually in situations where you're in a comfortable environment, where you're surrounded by people just like you, then you will never change. But if I put myself in different environments that say, how can I learn? How can I grow? How can I be stretched? How can I take risk? That is going to make me a better leader, and that's going to help our team also. I'm going to bring them along with me. I had this experience, and you need to have a similar experience. And when we can have those experiences together, then we can start to break down some of these walls, some of these barriers that have kept us from moving forward as humans, right?
Mhm.
Like it not even as organizations, but as a human race, we've got to be able to move forward. And the only way that we can do that is to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Ken, I always believe that any good and effective leader is a good listener, my friend. So, how
Yes.
can we help leaders improve their listening skills to ensure that every member of their team feels valued, respected, and heard? My friend, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that might be our fourth one, right? That might be our the fourth thing where we talked about community, we talked about inclusion, we talked about servanthood, and now I think this last thing here where we're talking about just understanding each other better and saying, all right, what is it that I'm going to do as a leader to make sure that we move together, and how do we listen? How do we really listen to each other? I think there's a difference. You even mentioned it there. You might not have realized it. You said, how can we listen better to each other and make sure that people feel heard? And listening is one thing, but making people feel heard is another. And I can listen to you, but if I'm not actually hearing you, if I'm not taking that into account, then I'm just like, all right, well, I listened to what you had to say, but I didn't hear how you felt. I didn't hear what it was that you were trying to bring to the table, and I didn't hear what you actually had to say. So I think that if I am hearing people, it means that I'm caring for you as well. I care for you as an individual. I care about what you have to say, and I'm going to take that to heart. And if leaders and organizations can do that, if we can listen to our people in a place of not just, all right, I'm doing my one on one. What is it that you have to say? I'm just going to listen to what you have to say so I can tell you what I need to say. And that's different than hearing you, applying what I've heard, and then responding to you. I think hearing is responding. Listening is kind of taking it in. I listen to audibles, I listen to podcasts, I listen to all the things. And if I'm listening to it, but if I'm not applying it, if I'm not responding to it, if I'm not taking action out of it, then it's just in this ear and right out of this one. So I believe that in order for us to get better at listening, we have to really hear people and respond to them and take action on what they've said.
Yeah, and my next question is a two-part question, so you can take it in any direction you want, my friend. I'm curious to ask you about developing more assertive leaders that are thought-provoking, that are able to have the discipline to make assertive decisions while also allowing people to feel heard and respected. How do you think we can balance the two, my friend?
Mm. Whew. That's a tough one. Kevin, what have you experienced with that? I think I would love to dialogue a little bit on this one.
Yeah, so when I think about effective leaders, I always tell business people that it's important to look at the skill set before you look at a job description. And
Mm.
I always tell them that that in my work, I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion a lot, and I always tell them that it's one thing to put the statement at the end of a job description, but it's another thing to practice it entirely. So
Yes.
I think assertive leadership for me starts with making it a core principle of your organizational culture. I always tell leaders of any type that we make time for the things that we prioritize. So I think being an assertive leader means that you're willing to assert that you want to make collaboration or thought-provoking leadership that's collaborative, inclusive, or competitive advantage within the walls of your organization, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I think with that it is the collaborative piece. Just having multiple people in the room doesn't mean that you're collaborative. Listening, responding, creating action steps out of what people say in that room together allows you to be collaborative. But if I don't include everyone in the conversation, but they're all just listening or they're all just there, then that is not collaborative. So, what are the action steps that we have to take to be collaborative, to include everyone in decision making, to include everyone in the process? I think that's another big piece of what you're looking for is when we're saying, I'm going to bring this along, I'm going to bring people along with me, not just tell them what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm curious to ask you about reducing burnout at work and how
Mhm.
creating a collaborative culture at work can help reduce burnout both at work and at home, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, burnout is one of those things I feel like it comes from the mundane or it comes from the lack of passion that you would have. So when I love something, when I'm passionate about it, when I'm driven by it, I don't think about time. I don't think about, I spent 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours, whatever it is there because I'm passionate about it. A lot of the core contact and communication that you and I have had, even to set up this podcast, is at all different times of the day, where you respond and I respond. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's the afternoon, sometimes it's in the evening, because we're not driven by a clock. We're not driven by that. We're driven by our passion and wanting to have this conversation. So if I were to say, oh well, I'm only going to respond between 9 and 4 or 7 and 3, whatever it is, then I'm not actually passionate about what I'm doing. And I think that passion level of understanding your workplace, your environment, your culture, creating a fun environment, creating an environment of collaboration, creating buy-in across all pieces of the organization. Again, whether it's IT, whether it's any other level of support staff, whether it's C-suite level, whether it's managerial level, like whatever. How are you overlapping some lunch times? How are you overlapping some Christmas parties? How are you overlapping some team meetings where I'm going to bring this person in from a different department to give me different perspective, even though they don't have anything to do with this particular project? That's okay, but I need to be able to have that perspective from them. And now they are even more open to collaborating with me or inviting me to collaborate with them because I invited them into the conversation.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about collaboration from a family perspective. I know you recently moved to Austin to take advantage of some professional opportunities as a pastor, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about the collaboration sense and how it contributes to your family values as well, and how collaboration can improve your family life. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, yeah, the fun part of family is it's the rawest version of you, right? You are going to have your rawest emotion. You are going to have your rawest experience with your family because they love you and you love them, and that love is hopefully in most cases going to withstand the test of time. And collaboration at home, especially with my younger kids, looks a lot different. But collaboration with my wife is getting on the same page, listening to one another, making sure that we're having regular conversations on all the major pieces of essentially our little organization, right? We look at our family as an organization. What values do we have? What mission do we have? What mission statement do we have? Where are we going to go with our finances? Where are we going to go with the experiences that we want our kids to have? All of that is part of us collaborating together and having great conversation. Now we're starting to include our kids in that, right? So, hey, what is it that you want to do? Oh, I want to play video games. All right, well, let's play video games together for 20 minutes. And then after I've asked them what they want to do and we do that, then they in return ask me, hey, now that I did this with you, what do you think daddy wants to do? I don't know. Daddy, what do you want to do? I want to go outside and I want to ride our bikes. I want to play basketball. I want to play baseball. I want to do whatever. So that collaboration, oftentimes with younger kids, it starts with them, but then you can have it reciprocated back to you, which again is servanthood, it's communication, it's all of those things at the rawest form within your family. And if you can apply it there, then you can just scale it up and apply it to your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Got two more questions for you, my friend.
This is great. I love it. We go all
Yeah,
day. You want 10?
yeah, no, I only got two more, and then I'll let you go, my friend. But it's the holiday season, my friend, and I want to know what's on your holiday wish list this year. And I also have a question in relation to holiday parties. The Wall Street Journal just released a report that said that less than one third of Americans are going to bring a plus one to a work holiday Christmas party, my friend. So I wonder
Wow.
your thoughts on the appropriate etiquette when it comes to bringing a plus one to a work holiday party, my friend. So you can take that two-part question in any direction that you like, my friend.
That's great. Yeah, Christmas. What I've done recently for Christmas, for work and for home, I read a book a few years back called "The Power of Moments" by Chip and Dan Heath, and it really changed my perspective and understanding of kind of gifts and creating those moments. Gifts fade away if you think about over your lifetime, how many birthdays that you've had, how many birthday parties you've had, how many Christmases you've had, how many different kind of events that you've had where you've had to celebrate, and the gifts that you've gotten, how many of those do you actually remember? Probably not. Probably not a lot. I went back and thought about it myself, and I go, I can really only remember probably getting a Nintendo when I was 10 years old. Right? That's about the only Christmas gift that I remember getting on Christmas. But I do remember the moments that I had with my dad and my mom, the laughter that we had, the times around the fire. I remember the breakfasts that we had. I remember all of those things. And I think that when we create moments, they far outlast the gifts. And so I want to try to incorporate that at home and at work. So one of our Christmas moments this year is for our family. We are going to Disney. We're taking the kids to Disney World for Christmas. On Christmas Day, we're waking them up. We're getting them on a plane, and we're going to Christmas. We're going to Christmas at Disney, and that is a moment that they will have forever. They will remember that forever. But if I just got them some gifts, those gifts would be played with for a few days, few weeks maybe, and then they'd be on to a different gift. Same thing for work. Instead of getting them an ornament, or instead of getting them a gift that they probably wouldn't keep or wouldn't care about, a bag. I could do that on an appreciation level anytime during the year. But what I wanted to do was create a moment. So what I did is I took my team. We went out just to an arcade, and we bowled and we laser tagged and we played video games. And those moments, they're like, man, this was the best Christmas party that we've ever had. And I think if we can create those moments that people look back at, it'll far outweigh the gifts. It'll far outweigh the little trinkets that kind of keep us appeased, but not really fulfilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
And the second part, I forgot to answer the second part of your question. Why do you think people are not bringing a plus one?
yeah, absolutely. I want your thoughts there, my friend.
Man, I don't know. I think sometimes in the corporate world, unfortunately, it gets a little messy, and they would rather have more fun, or what they think is fun, with not someone that isn't their spouse than their spouse. So I think it might be more of a cultural issue of relationships, whether it be their spouse or it be a significant other. How strong is their relationship? If it were me, I'd be bringing my wife. I'm like, hey, plus one, let's go. That's a date night for me and her. But I think that it's probably gone down because they don't want the accountability. They don't want the hard conversation. They don't want to. They want to let loose, maybe a little too much, and that can lead to probably not the greatest decision making at the end of the night either.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And my final question for you is sports related, my friend, because
Yes.
as a old sports reporter, and I know that you're a fan of basketball, my friend, and I used to be a sports reporter. So, and on this note, my friend, so if I gave you a chance to win $1 million to spend it on anything you wanted, but the only criteria I gave you was you were visualizing making this half-court shot at this opportunity for $1 million, my friend, was this. All I wanted you to do was visualize your life, your legacy, and how you wanted sort of your lifetime achievement party to go. What do you think would will you to thrust the ball into the basket as a way to win the $1 million, my friend? And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I would immediately think of two things. I would think of in what ways could I be generous with this amount of money that I'm going to get, and in what ways, from a legacy perspective, would I invest into the future of my family. So my kids, kids, that 20, 30 years from now would be born. So what would thrust me forward in making that shot and winning that $1 million is to say, whose life would I be able to impact long term beyond my own? And if I can look at some friends and some family members that would benefit from that I would give them what they needed to live a life that would escalate their experience. And I would want my kids and my future grandkids to also be able to experience that. So honestly, the breakdown of that would probably be a lot of investing for the future.
Fair enough. It's good to
Less spending and more investing.
well, it's good to be a planner of prosperity, isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely, my friend. And finally, tell me if people want to get connected with you, Ken. What's the best and most effective way they can do that?
Yeah, the most effective way is LinkedIn. I love our LinkedIn family and community, as well as Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can follow me there at KD Hester, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Ken Hester, and I'm sure you'll drop some of those links in as well. But I love to really connect with people. I've had more conversations. Even this one here is just reaching out and creating an actual real life connection. With social media, it seems to be less and less social. The original form of it was to be able to connect and make new connections with people that you didn't know. And I love to do that. So I loved meeting you, Kevin. Loved having this conversation with you, and look forward to having you in Austin in February, and connecting with you even more, going out to lunch and creating this, continuing this conversation.
Well, Ken, I have to tell you, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. And as someone who spent a great deal of time talking about organizational culture, my friend, I'm smarter for having this conversation. I want to thank you for the good work that you do in this regard and for engaging in conversation with me this morning. I want to wish you a great holiday season and say hi to Mickey Mouse for me when you head down to Disney World for Christmas, okay?
That's right.
I want to
Thank
thank you
you.
for being here, my friend. It's most appreciated.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a great conversation. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you as well. And we'll see you soon.